se aplica, así que esa es la intención. Nos
Y lo
saluda
que,
Gustavo.
y lo
Sí,
que nos ayuda mucho, ¿no? Es que a veces mucha gente dice que cantidad no es calidad. Creo que
así es.
todos han sido de una gran calidad. Nuestra idea es moderar. Nosotros podemos podemos conocer. Creo que no nos consideramos en ciertos tópicos de expertos, pero nuestra forma es esa, ¿no? Es de invitar a gente que realmente es experta en el tema para que los expertos abran un foro, los expertos hablen y los expertos enseñen. Eso es, creo que es Oftalmo University, ¿no?
Así es, un espacio, como siempre decimos, para todos, y bueno, en donde queremos acercarles a los mayores líderes de opinión del tema al respecto. También hay espacio para los que están en formación, como va a ser lo que va a ocurrir el miércoles con silla vacía, y ya le vamos a contar. Esa es un poco la idea, que todos tengamos un espacio. Y esta imagen, que seguramente después la vamos a mostrar, que es un poco resume lo que estábamos hablando, Pablo, ¿no? Esta transferencia de conocimientos, este exchange entre pares, ¿sí? Para nutrirnos y para ir mejorando e ir compartiendo puntos de vista, siempre con respeto y con respecto hacia nuestros pares, pero bueno, proponiendo ideas y formas de ver las cosas. Nos encantó esta frase, la estuvimos usando toda la semana pasada, ¿sí? De que, bueno, esto de el éxito, que es también muy relativo, no va en ascensor, sino que hay que tomar las escaleras y un poco, llamemos éxito al conocimiento, si queremos, ¿sí? O a tratar de ser un poquito mejores en lo nuestro, que es la oftalmología. Así que hay que ir paso a paso y es un poco lo que también proponemos. Antes de empezar con lo que se viene en la semana, vuelvo un poquito para atrás, a ver que ya se está sumando cada vez más gente, a ver desde dónde nos miran, ¿sí? Que nos vayan contando. Ahí teníamos a un colega de Tarija, de Bolivia, donde está Gustavo. Bueno, gracias por acompañarnos.
Mario Politz, de acá de Ecuador.
Oli,
Siempre, primerito, Mario ha
siempre,
sido, creo
siempre.
que, una de las personas que
Mario,
tra
Cherian, son todos los que tienen
sí,
asistencia perfecta. Ahí está Noé también, nuestro
bien,
amigo querido Noé,
Noé,
un
sí, la verdad que
gigante.
es gente que nos ha acompañado y les agradecemos un montón.
El doctor Everardo Hernández, un gran amigo, un gran maestro, le mando un gran abrazo de la ceguera de México, así que bueno, qué bueno tenerlo acá, profe. Hemos aprendido mucho de Everardo, ¿sí? Eh, ¿Qué más? Bueno, voy a mostrar un poco lo que se viene en la semana, si les parece. Estamos a 6 minutitos de empezar. Queremos siempre empezar de manera muy puntual, ser medio como siempre decimos ingleses en este tema. Bueno, como decíamos, tenemos 2 eventos y algunos días 3 eventos por día. Vamos a mencionar algunos nomás. Mañana, miércoles, en el primer turno, vuelve la gente de Oftalmo Imágenes con todo lo que ellos nos ofrecen y los top 10 tips en campo visual. Va a estar buenísimo. Ya lo hicimos en
La
OCT.
rompieron la semana pasada, ¿no?
Tremendo, tremendo. En YouTube son de las charlas que más visitas tienen. Se ve que la gente se ha enganchado mucho con este formato. Lo hacen de maravilla. La verdad que Munir, que es el creador de Oftalmo Imágenes, este congreso, tiene la capacidad y la habilidad de juntar grandes expertos en el tema que también facilitan mucho la transferencia de conocimiento, porque no siempre es tan fácil. La verdad que se han lucido siempre y bueno, y el miércoles, perdón, vienen con esto de campo visual. Abrazo Andrés, gracias Everardo, te mandamos un gran abrazo y todo nuestro cariño desde acá, gracias por acompañarnos, una eminencia también el doctor Everardo Hernández de México, es un honor tenerlo por acá. El miércoles, no sé si Lisa estás por ahí, ¿querés
Sí,
contar un poquito?
estoy. Sí, la segunda edición de Silla Vacía, la idea que comenzamos la semana pasada, en la cual damos un lugar para que sean ustedes los que nos expongan lo que quieran exponer, casos, presentaciones. Básicamente lo que queremos hacer es que envíen la propuesta a nuestro mail, que es oftalmouniversity@gmail.com. De todas las propuestas vamos a preseleccionar nosotros 10, y esas 10 van a estar disponibles para que sea el propio público el que vote cuáles quiere escuchar, y 4 de ellas, las 4 más votadas, los escuchamos durante 5 minutos cada presentación, y después podemos debatir un poquito si hace falta más, pero las presentaciones deben ser de 5 minutos.
Y 5 minutos así,
Sí,
se corta. Suena
5
la
minutos
chicharra.
con tolerancia de 2. Tolerancia de 2, pero en 7 se corta.
Suena la chicharra y se corta el micrófono, así sea quien sea. Pero bueno, aprovechemos que está muy bueno este formato. No se olviden de mandar sus ideas a ophthalmouniversity@gmail, que ahí las vamos clasificando y hacemos pasar a los 10 temas que a lo mejor consideramos humildemente que pueden ser los más interesantes o más relevantes. El viernes, también tenemos el jueves, bueno, ahí está Emilio. Hola Emilio, bienvenido.
Hola Andrés, hola Lisandro, Pablo.
Hola,
Hola Emilio.
Más una vez.
Gracias, amigo, por acompañarnos nuevamente ya de la casa, Emilio. Muchas gracias por estar. Es mucho más tarde allá, son las 10 de la noche casi en Suiza, así que bueno, bienvenido.
Gracias a ustedes todos.
Estamos
Hola
haciendo...
Valeria.
Está Valeria también, ya llegó.
¿Cómo están?
Ahí
¿Qué tal?
está, muy bien.
Hola,
Hola, Vale.
Hola, Vale.
Valeria.
Hola, hola.
Ya estamos casi todos, estamos esperando por el profesor Jafesi, el profesor Alió. Y bueno, Vale, estamos contando un poco qué se viene en la semana, que siempre lo hacemos en español para toda nuestra audiencia de Latinoamérica, y después ya cambiaremos al inglés cuando lleguen los demás y empecemos. Les decía que el
Y
viernes...
todo va a ser en inglés, ¿verdad?
Sí, todo va a
Toda la
ser en
hora.
inglés. Vamos a tener probablemente, ya les vamos a confirmar, en el canal de YouTube un colega, ¿sí? Un amigo que nos va haciendo la translation al español por si alguien no llega a entender. En el chat de YouTube se va transmitiendo, se va traduciendo en vivo, ¿sí? O sea, todo lo que vayamos hablando. Los conceptos más importantes, para que a lo mejor se le complica, puede ir al canal de YouTube y ahí está también traducido. Bueno, el viernes tenemos un evento muy especial porque vienen los chicos y las chicas de Oculoplástica, el Hands-On Red Carpet. Vamos a tener como moderador ni más ni menos que a Robert Goldberg, una eminencia del tema. Va a haber un taller en vivo, va a estar muy, pero muy interesante. Esto es el viernes, este viernes, 3 de la tarde México, 5 de la tarde Argentina. Y después, o mejor dicho antes, vamos a tener esto, la cirugía en vivo virtual, que ya tenemos acostumbrado, el episodio número 2, donde vamos a estar hablando de hidrodisección, ni más ni menos que con Bruna Ventura y nuestro querido Ivo Ferreira, ¿sí? Recuerden que esto se hace con el simulador, en vivo, allá desde México, así que está muy interesante. Bueno, ya somos bastantes, nos estamos sumando, nos quedan unos minutitos más, estamos esperando por el profesor Jafesi, el doctor Alió, así que mientras vamos charlando entre nosotros.
Vale.
¿Qué pasó?
No nos cerrarás la conferencia.
No, asegúrense de que no estoy de anfitrión,
No,
por
si es
favor.
que te vas y nos
Emilio,
botas como
perdón.
nos botaste la última.
Dice chao y es chao literal, se va ella, ¿viste cómo es? Mujer de
¿saben qué?
pocas pulgas.
Así es, yo ya
Sin
cambié,
mí
ya
no
chao.
hay, no siguen.
Claro.
Well,
Sí, no, Andrés, asegúrate de no. Bueno, ahora no tengo ninguna reunión pronta, o sea que no debería de tener que salirme.
nos quedamos todos como congelados, pero bueno, no, son cosas que pasan.
No, tranquila.
Dr. Hafez is here. Welcome.
Hi, nice to meet you.
How are you? Nice to meet you. Thanks for being here with us.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. I appreciate it.
No, please. Our pleasure. And it's a honor to have you here. This is your first time in Ophthalmo University. Welcome.
Yes. Thank you.
Emilio, it's a friend of the house, we can say. Valeria is already here. Pablo, Lisandro.
Hi,
Hello, doctor.
Pablo, hi.
Hey,
All ready.
Dr.
Do you-
Jafesi, how's it going?
Do you speak Spanish, Dr. Jafesi? Some Spanish?
No, unfortunately not. No, but I'm happy to learn.
You have to learn. Okay, you can learn with Emilio. Emilio speaks very, very well Spanish.
That's
I
good
think
to know.
I think that Ophthalmo University should start some Spanish lessons online.
That would be a great idea. Okay, before we start, we always do these previews. We speak with the people. We know we like to ask where are they from. We have people from Santa Cruz, Bolivia, Spain, New York, Chile. It's pretty amazing. And one of the things in Ophthalmic University that we love is this concept about the knowledge exchange. Today in the morning, we had Dr. Gattinel, Damien Gattinel, and it's very interesting because we are going to have both sides of the coin, right? I mean, different opinion, different theories, and we have to make our own decision. And this is why we love this space, because everyone has different opinions, different theories, and this is a place to share and discuss and debate these ideas. So we are very happy with all of you, this dream team panel, and we're going to have great tools for the future.
Sounds great.
So we're waiting for Dr. Elio a few more minutes. So meanwhile, we can speak with our audience from Cochabamba, Bolivia. Hello, Shirley Vidal Claros. How is everything in Switzerland, Dr. Jafesi and Emilio? It's cold. How is the climate, the weather?
It was about 25 degrees yesterday. We were lucky, and then today it dropped to 2 degrees in the morning, 12 degrees during the day. But usually this time of the year we are in our low 20s.
We can see that you have a beautiful view behind you. Maybe it's your window or.
Yeah, because I'm sitting in my home office here, and you would see a bedroom right behind. So I prefer this one. Yeah, that's the view of the Eiger, and of the Jungfraujoch. Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. So how's everything in Mexico, Valeria?
Everything.
Oh wait.
For the infection for the virus. So this and the next week, we are expecting a lot of patients getting contagious. So we'll just see. We had a couple of people at the hospital that just got infected. So let's see how things go. Besides the coronavirus, we are still doing homeschooling with the girls, which is very, I don't know how the people do it on a regular basis. So let's wait to see how things move on.
Okay, excellent. If you agree, I'm gonna stop sharing, and maybe we can start. What do you think? Maybe I don't know if Emilio, you can contact Dr. Elio. Maybe
Did you send him the link, Andres?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will send him again then.
Oh, he's calling me.
Okay.
Hello, Jose. Hello, Jorge. Jorge, I cannot hear you right now.
Should I send another email?
Jorge, I will forward you the link now via email that gives you direct access to the Zoom. I unfortunately cannot hear you, Jorge. Let me just quickly send him the link that I received from you.
Is it the same?
This one.
We send the email to.
Excuse me, doctor. You cannot send the same link because it's a personalized link. So.
Could you send him one more? I will call him back.
I will resend the link for Dr. Elio.
Now we try to call him.
No worries. We can wait a few more minutes. Valeria, Dr. Everardo is here in the audience, and Dr. Berrio. So you have your fans here supporting you.
Okay.
Hello, Chief. How are you?
Oh, I see.
He
I will
cannot
do
answer.
this in a second. Just stay online. They will send you
Andrés,
a special link
fíjate
in
que
1
vos sos
second.
el admin ahora, el doctor Alió está como espectador, pasalo a panelista.
Okay.
O sea, anda a la lista, buscalo ahí, fíjate que tenés el botón derecho y ascender como panelista.
Okay. Let me see.
¿Lo viste?
Sí.
Excuse me, Lisandro, I received a message from Jorge Alio, and he's asking to resend the invitation to another email address.
Okay,
I'm sending it to you now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a Gmail address. It's coming now.
Okay.
That's it.
Excellent.
Perfect. I will send the link to him.
Okay, Emilio, would you like to start sharing your screen? Meanwhile, Dr. Alio is here.
It's already done.
Okay, excellent. Very well. We will start in a few more minutes. We are waiting for Dr. Alio. So, excellent.
Are you already seeing here?
Yes, we can see. You're seeing your desktop. Let's see. Okay. Okay, we have, let me see. We have a doctor from Belarus. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for being here. Dr. Jorge León Carrera from Mexico, I think so. What else? Fabio Terragni from Argentina. Hello, Fabio. Good to see you again. We love to know where are you guys from. So just put it on the chat and we can say hello. Okay. Professor Alio, how are you?
How are you? Nice. Finally, I'm here. How are you doing?
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Fine. I had problems in the connection, but now seems that you can receive me properly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
okay.
Great. Very good.
We are all set, so we can just start. Emilio, whenever you want. Thank you again for being here and for helping me to organize this amazing meeting with all of you.
Thank you, Andres, of Tom University again for the invitation, and it's a great pleasure to be with you again. I saw your presentation this morning. It was very interesting, very good. But today we're speaking about cross-linking, so it's a bit different than what we heard from Dr. Gattinelli this morning. Well, I'm presenting about the individualized cross-linking in ultra-thin cornice and sub-400 protocol. Oops. So thin cornice have always been a limitation for cross-linking procedures. We were working on this, as this is a limitation found in many cases of keratoconus, so thin cornice. You can see here an example how sometimes we receive patients with cornice with 350 micra, such this, and another example in a situation like this with a 260 micra cornea and still good vision with contact lens. What could we do? So in this case, would cross-linking still be an option? So that's the question. And many protocols have been proposed in order to treat thin corneas. The first one by Professor Hafezi and Seidler was over 10 years ago with the use of the hypoosmolar riboflavin. So this would swell in the cornea. And then a few years later, Susan Jacob came up with the idea of increasing the thickness with a contact lens. And also Mazzotta from Italy came up recently, not so recently, 2014 as well, with the idea of maintaining an epithelial island on thin areas of the cornea with keratoconus. And if you look, they all have the same principle, which is artificially increase the thickness of the cornea. So the first one with hypoosmolar riboflavin would increase with edema. The second one with artificial contact lens, and the third one with the areas that would be with epithelium on, so over the epithelium. And the initial idea of hypoosmolar riboflavin was basically creating an osmotic gradient, and these would induce edema in cornea just before the radiation. So in the beginning, at the beginning, some studies showed that this edema could result in a minor biomechanical effect, but this study from last year from Volensack showed that this is not really the problem. In other words, we are able to achieve quite a good stiffening effect even after swelling the cornea. The problem, however, is in the variability that each cornea would present when this is used. So here you see in red, some corneas swell 30 micra, and others up to 100 micra. These using the same frequency of riboflavin instillation. So here, the lack of repeatability could be the issue. Well, the other approach that I mentioned is the use of contact lenses, and which would artificially increase also the thickness of the cornea. But here comes another problem. And the problem is basically the contact lens, but why? So diffusion oxygen, we all know, you spoke this morning that oxygen is an essential element. So diffusion of oxygen is the key here with contact lens. So the red columns here just shows that without oxygen, we don't have cross-linking. Then of course, the contact lens would still, would even limit the stromal oxygen diffusion. And the result of that, we can see here, there is a decrease in effect of cross-linking around 30 to 50% according to the contact lens that is used. So here in red, you see a normal cross-linking, and in blue, the stiffening effect over a cornea with contact lenses. And this was done in 2015 by Kling and Hafezi, our group as well. And last year, Volensack repeated the experiments and also found the same. So a decrease in effect, in the stiffening effect after using contact lens assisted cross-linking. And until now, so most of the techniques for treating thin corneas have tried to change the thickness or the riboflavin concentration. But then that's when Hafezi and Sabine Kling came up with the idea of also changing the UV intensity. So why not changing the UV intensity? And the idea would be actually to simplify all the methodologies. In other words, to use something that was accessible to all ophthalmologists, because we know that the initial cross-linking devices have 3 milliwatts per square centimeter. So every ophthalmologist with cross-linking device would be able to apply this methodology. And so a theoretical model was developed to predict the cross-linking efficacy for different corneal thickness and allow treatments in cornea even lower than 400. And this is already published, but it's a very complex calculation. Basically, the idea was that accelerating protocols would produce a more shallow demarcation line, and this is based also on oxygen diffusion. So here is what we would have, the demarcation line in a normal cornea. You can see in yellow on the left image. And so far, what we are doing, if we have a thin cornea, is to swell in the cornea or to add something over the cornea to artificially increase the thickness. On the other hand, the individualized cross-linking with our protocol sub 400, we would individualize the energy for each patient. So in other words, a patient with 300 microcornea would have different energy applied than a patient that has 200 micro, for example. And so we did this, and this is based on oxygen diffusion, as I said, and the efficacy of cross-linking. And this was done now in more than 50 patients, but we have data here of 47 patients, 47 eyes, all of them with less than 400 micra before irradiation, and then individualized irradiation time was applied. So I will show you how this was done. So all the patients, of course, have the preoperative thickness of the cornea, and this was measured again just after the epithelial removal. This was to control. So we have all this data, and after the soaking of riboflavin, again the thickness was measured. So this post-ribo thickness was used to calculate the required energy to achieve a demarcation line that was estimated to be around 70 to 8 micra from the endothelium. So all the calculation was in this regard, in this sense. And we follow the patients with Scheimpflug images, and here you see some interesting, can you see? Yes. Interesting image, 282 micra over the demarcation line and 82. So this was a case where we could exactly have what we would like to have. Of course, not all cases we had such a perfect estimation, but our median demarcation line was around 300 micra. And here the most interesting result. So the refraction 1 year after was stable, both sphere and cylinder, and also visual acuity 1 year after. So about the indexes, so we know that Kmax may not be the ideal index to estimate progression, neither to estimate neither before nor after cross-linking, but that's still very used. So we also used Kmax, and a year after we had a decrease in Kmax of over 2 diopters, so more than the repeatability of the devices that we usually see in keratoconus. And interesting, the central 3 millimeter radius did not increase, and we may suggest here that we had a regularization, so the Kmax decreased in some point, but the overall stayed stable, which is very good. And everybody wants to know the success, so the failure rate, how this number was. We had success in over 90% of the patients. So more than 90% of the patients did not progress more than 1 diopter over 1 year. And here we have to remember that those are patients that had thickness under 400 micra. So in many situations, most of the people would still not perform cross-linking, and they would possibly progress, and even more, this could lead to a corneal transplantation. So even if is slightly higher than standard protocols, let's say, this number would be very, very promising. So very good in advanced cases. So here you can see an example image of a demarcation line in a very thin cornea. So in the upper image, 220 microcornea, and the image below, just to compare how the thickness differences are. So in average, that was the results that we had. That was the standard flattening. But as I said, we had few cases with great remodeling, even with lower irradiances, lower fluencies that were used, but also some failure cases, of course, that I showed. And just to finish, these patients did not participate on our study, but here is an example how the sub 400 protocol could also be used in other pathologies, such as this case that was a keratoglobus. So you can see how thin the cornea was in the periphery. And on those cases, we would like, of course, to avoid keratoplasty. I may say that the most difficult surgery that I've ever performed was a lamellar keratoplasty in a keratoglobus patient that had 150, 180 migra. So I would not like to repeat such a surgery. And if we had an option to avoid the progression, even on those extreme situations, would be perfect. And that was the result, actually, 2 years after cross-linking in such keratoglobus patient. Of course, the contact lenses in this patient were successful. It was a very special contact lens, but the patient could have a very good visual acuity even 2 years after cross-linking with contact lens. So as final messages, the individualized cross-linking with sub 400 protocol did show promising results in halting keratoconus progression in ultra thin cornea, so all the corneas lower than 400 micra. 1 year failure rate was slightly higher than standard cross-linking. We had around 9% of failure in 1 year, which is amazing, I would say. And this nomogram is also able to treat, and of course brings new perspectives for treating ultra thin corneas with keratoconus, but also other disease. So thank you very much.
Fantastic presentation, Emilio. Thank you so much. Very interesting. I would like to ask you, we have 2 questions of the public. One of them is Dr. Marota. He asks you, in these cases, do you measure the epithelium in order to detect the irregularities of the corneal epithelium? And then Dr. Mohamed asks, do you use this protocol in post-ectasia LASIK?
Well, the first question, the epithelial thickness, yes, we since around 1 year or a bit more than 1 year, Professor Hafez may correct me if I'm wrong about the time, but around 1 year we have epithelial thickness. We measure before and after as well, but the epithelial thickness is not the purpose. We do not need the epithelial thickness to be able to perform individualized cross-linking. So we use actually the stromal thickness just after the soaking. So intraoperative, we measure how much the cornea has after the soaking, and this number is used as a, we just take the pachymetry, see on the table, and this number is used to calculate the radiation time.
Excellent.
And about the second question was
ectasia
about ectasia and LASIK.
Yes. If I'm not sure, Professor Hafezi did a few cases as well. If I'm not sure, around 5 patients post-LASIK ectasia, but they were not included in this patient in this cohort. But yes, it was also possible. So every entity that has a thinner cornea that would benefit for cross-linking that so far could not be done otherwise can be done with individualized cross-linking. So we take the cornea, the thickness, no matter if it's keratoglobus, post-LASIK ectasia, or keratoconus. But what I presented you here was just post-keratoconic corneas, and we have documented progression before as well to be more reliable data.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Emilio. Pablo,
yes. Can I make
sorry.
a question to Emilio?
Yeah.
Yes, sure.
Emilio, hello. Jorge from Spain. Nice to hear you. Thank you for this presentation. You know, my point is that important, the endothelium? Because studies that have been performed have never demonstrated that the endothelium is sensitive to ultraviolet light in the doses that we use. And probably we are simply thinking that something that is a priori a problem when it has not been demonstrated. It seems that the problems that happened at the beginning were related to insufficient knowledge about the technique or even malpractice. But I don't think that the endothelium is sensitive to ultraviolet light to be that careful about how deep we are and how thin is the corneal stroma. Anyway, congratulations, it's a great study. There's a lot of information there. But just my question is whether this is something that important to consider the depth in which the endothelial cells could be located to be damaged by the ultraviolet light. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a perfect and very good question, because before the earlier studies, they had estimate actually the 400 micro rule came up 20 years ago because they estimated how much of riboflavin would have at the endothelial level. And so there was at that time no direct measurements, that was just mathematical calculations. And now last year, 2 years ago in 2019, I think, Seiler's group published how much riboflavin we have at the endothelial level using microscopy. And what they saw is that the riboflavin that they measure was half of what they estimated 20 years ago. So what does that mean? Does that mean that if we have riboflavin and UV energy, but we have less riboflavin that we thought that we would, we can have more energy? So this gradient is about 1.7, and of course more studies are needed, but probably this limit would be much higher. So this 400 micro rule that was spread over the years probably is not fully corrected, and we could still much higher. So this was during our study, this was published, this Seiler paper. So now we are also increasing the energy for the second generation of the sub 400 protocols, based on your comments and based as well on the higher amount of energy that endothelium may support without damage, so safely.
What riboflavin they used in that study, Emilio?
That was a hypoosmolar riboflavin without the extra, without HPMC.
Okay.
Excellent. Valeria, you have a lot of patients in Mexico with low pachymetry. What is your option in these cases? What are you guys doing at this moment in Mexico, in APEC?
Well, at the hospital, we are using Iontophoresis, and exactly as Emilio said, we first put the 5 minutes of Iontophoresis to impregnate the stroma. And then while we do this, we soak the contact lens in a little bit of riboflavin that we take out of the same syringe. And afterwards, we place it over the cornea to UV light pulses.
If I may just intercept.
And we haven't had any endothelium damage, and we have a good stopping the progression. I agree with Emilio. It's not as good as without the contact lens for stopping progression, and we do have some patients that have not worked, but there are few of them.
Okay, excellent. Professor
Just
Hafesi, you were saying
just a
something.
brief comment from my side. And as you all know, there are many ways to roam. I think the beauty of this protocol is that you don't need more additional technology like Iontophoresis or others, but you can work with the oldest machines available on the market. And what Jorge Alio mentioned is true. Nowadays, we know that we can apply more energy. But at the same time, if I can avoid putting too much energy into the cornea while still maintaining my effect, I would certainly do this. And as Emilio has also mentioned, ever since we know that the cornea can bear much more intensity, we are looking at way higher fluences in these thin corneas than anything that has been published under the Dresden protocol. So what we publish now are the data generated with the first generation protocol, and the second generation protocol will see much higher fluences, and I hope that we can drive the success rate even higher.
Excellent. Thank you, Professor. Dr. Hernandez from Mexico, La Ceguera, said, we have used SMILE lenticles in these cases. Yeah, we know that that is another option. And the last question before we move forward, Dr. Abelsky asked, do you use only BSS during irradiation in this protocol, Emilio? Besides the eposmolar riboflavin, of course, just BSS, or you add something else?
Yeah, this was, I think, Farik, would you like to answer this? Because this has changed over the past months or years, recently, very recently. So
yeah. Either one of us could answer it, but since a few months, we do not apply any riboflavin onto the cornea anymore during irradiation. During a Dresden protocol, we don't. This came up after a long discussion with Eberhard Spörl. Just imagine you saturate a cornea with riboflavin. You do this for, let's say, 20 minutes, you start shining the light. What happens? The photons of the light hit the first riboflavin molecule they encounter very shallowly. And this is where the cross-linking starts. So after a few seconds, a few microns of cornea are cross-linked. After 1 minute, it goes a little deeper. After 2 minutes, it goes even deeper. And this border forms the demarcation line. Now, what happens if you reapply riboflavin after 5 minutes onto the surface? You restart the whole process on the superficial cornea. So Spörl told us it is absolutely useless to reapply riboflavin during irradiation. So we stopped doing this. And just to remember, the riboflavin concentration within the stroma stays the same for 1 full hour. So there is really no need to reapply riboflavin.
Well, I think this is a very interesting concept because it's something new for, I think, most of us. Thank you so much, Professor, for sharing, because as we know, the Dresden protocol, they say you have to put, or you have to add riboflavin every 2 or 3 minutes during the UVA. Thank you so much. Okay. Yeah.
No, please.
Our next speaker, Dr. Alio. Thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you very much.
Whenever you want.
Thank you very much. And first of all, I'm happy to be with you today. I hope you will see my presentation properly. And you know, keratoconus is an important topic for us. We are in many areas of keratoconus studying it. But I'm going to show to you something practical that might be useful for you. And I'm going to show to you which is our trend today in the treatment of keratoconus in some selected cases. And the issue is that the advanced keratoconus treatment will combine customized PRK and cross-linking. This is not a new topic, but what is new is how we do it, okay? So first, we know that the frequency of keratoconus is far more than we expected. In Latin America, it is a plague, and especially in those countries that are around the equator. It's true that it is more frequent for any reason that is not only ethnical, it's geographical, probably other factors of influence, and so the whole world is affected now by this problem. We know that the only one method available today so far to stop the case of keratoconus is cross-linking. It was approved by NICE in UK in 2013, FDA in 2016. So we are already with a test of kind on this technique, and we know quite well how it works. We know, as has been mentioned by Dr. Neto before, that it's an oxygen-dependent process with vitamin B2 in between, and finally with ultraviolet light. And we have to consider that most of what we know about cross-linking and we are using in terms of application comes from the early description of cross-linking. Many myths and many probably not supported by evidence assumptions are happening. One definitely is the one about the corneal endothelium, and others is about time. But anyway, the issue is how is working cross-linking. And we know that cross-linking is working. These are the 4 randomized clinical studies have been published. In all these cases, the cross-linking technique that was used was a present protocol with all the limitations and indications. In all these cases, they did not use mitomycin C. And in all these cases, they really achieved what was a variable control of a variable flattening of the cornea with a variable refractive change. But all these cases and these randomized studies demonstrated that they achieve almost 100% stabilization of the keratoconus. In other words, cross-linking works, and cross-linking is a procedure that in which you cannot rely in terms of how much effect you will get on the refraction, how much effect you will get on the key value, and how much vision you will restore, even that the trend is to restore vision in these patients. But we know also that cross-linking increases the corneal stiffness about a multiple of 3. So as we are dealing with a stiffer tissue, it might be that we can really use part of the thickness to treat the refraction or the aberrations. In other words, to combine PRK with cross-linking, as far as we have a solid, much more solid structure, might be possible. It's true that we know also that customized treatments allow to reduce the corneal high-grade aberrations, which is really the reason of the visual decrease in keratoconus. So it would be ideal to use customized treatment in order to eliminate the burden of this problem, high-grade aberrations for the visual behavior of the eye, and at the same time we still the corneal cross-linking. Here, as an example, we're showing to you one of the initial cases in which we use this combined PRK cross-linking technique in a way that I will show to you immediately. And we saw that with the ablation that was really minimal, central was 11 microns, with a maximum of 28 microns, we got a patient that corrected for this visual acuity from 0.18 logMAR to minus 0.06, which is a remarkable outcome, and we transform the irregularity of this patient into regular astigmatism. This is what we were observing, and definitely this is something that can be, especially in cases in which we are dealing with not a very advanced keratoconus, an option rather than probably to make intracorneal implants or other procedures. So based on that, we look at the literature, and one of the good studies performed at this regard is the one of Alessio and collaborators in Italy, in which they did a prospective study in which they compare cross-linking only versus PRK and cross-linking. They demonstrated in these cases in which they were treating the refraction, they were not treating the aberrations, that the combination obtained a better uncorrected for this visual acuity, spherical aberration, and also high-grade aberration. That means that they, in spite of not using a customized treatment at that moment, they improved the vision of the patient. There was no case of progression in 24 months, either in the cross-linking or in the PRK combined with cross-linking group. And this study was performed in parallel with other of Kalidopoulos in Greece, in which he offered 3 years data available that with the Athens protocol demonstrated as well that this treatment was feasible and was stable. So the Kalidopoulos performed this study in which he used topo-guided PRK 6 months after cross-linking in 127 eyes, and simultaneously he did in a consecutive study a cross-linking just after topo-guided PRK with mitomycin C. This is one of the important differences. And the Kalidopoulos is using PRK in these cases, and so that he had a sequential group. So first topo-guided and then cross-linking. Another he did cross-linking immediately after the topo-guided. The outcomes were important because the simultaneous group achieved a better result in statistically talking, highly significant in terms of corrected for this visual acuity, spherical equivalent reduction, keratometric and flattening, and grade of the corneal haze. So in global, this treatment, the simultaneous group, was a better treatment with better vision and with better quality of refraction. All these achievements were demonstrated by Iontophoresis, and the most important thing, no negative impact in keratoconus progression was detected in any of the groups, what means that both to perform the cross-linking only or the combined approach were reliable and were safe for these eyes. Quiñones came later with a relatively similar technique, but I will explain to you what is different in Quiñones. Iontophoresis called his protocol the Athens protocol, Quiñones the Crete protocol. Basically, they are techniques in which they use topo-guided trans-PRK. That means they use corneal elevation to guide the ablation. The important difference is that Quiñones considers that we need to treat the whole cornea as much as possible, and he uses a 9mm optical zone, while Iontophoresis uses a 5.5 optical zone diameter. He wants to treat just the apex of the cone at the central area. Quiñones target up to 60% of the spherocylindrical refraction, while Iontophoresis treat up to the 70% of the spherocylinder. The residual possibility thickness of the cone apex was estimated by Quiñones that should be more than 400 microns, while it was not defined by Iontophoresis. He rather defined that he should make not more than 50 microns ablation in the stroma. The Dresden protocol was used in both groups, and in Quiñones he did not use mitomycin C, while Iontophoresis was using mitomycin C. So differences are concerning the maximum ablation, the stromal residual thickness that is left, the use of mitomycin, and basically the aggressiveness of the procedure. Iontophoresis was much more aggressive than Quiñones. Then this is another study in which total wavefront data was used to guide a topo-guided approach. So this is a study from Murphy's Eye Hospital for the group of Bruce Allen, and Bruce Allen estimated with a total study of the total aberration to select precisely the most relevant aberrations that were happening in the eye, to ignore the refraction, and then to treat especially the coma in order to restore vision, not taking into consideration the refraction. The outcomes of this combined PRK and cross-linking performed at the same time were important because he was using total eye wavefront data with trans-PRK treatment, so they were not eliminating manually the epithelium, but rather with the laser. He used, by the swing technology, the MARIS, the tissue-saving algorithm. They target only the most relevant is high-grade aberration, especially coma. He was not treating refraction at all. He tried to minimize tissue removal in doing that, and not considering refraction at all in the study. The minimum corneal thickness that was considered was 450 microns, and the predicted postoperative residual stromal bed should be more than 325 microns or equal. No mitomycin C was used, and the mean ablation depth that he was using in this paper was 34 plus minus 15 microns at the cone apex. These are the visual outcomes reported by the group of Allen. As you see, the corrected for distant visual acuity in blue, and the uncorrected visual acuity in the patients in which combined PRK guided by the total eye barometry and cross-linking were clearly improving in a significant way along the 24 months of the post-op, while the patients in which only cross-linking was performed, basically they did not change significantly the vision, both corrected or non-corrected. That means in cross-linking, he could ascertain a stabilization of the case, but not an improvement, rather than in the other group in which PRK customized for the most relevant aberrations was really showing an improvement in corrected and non-corrected visual acuity. The safety of both procedures was good, but it was better in the combined procedure. As you see here, 57% of the cases with only cross-linking were with no change, while 43% of the combined treatment were with no change. But on the contrary, gain of one line was equal in both groups. Gain of two lines was far better in the combined treatment, and gains of 3 or more lines was far better in the combined treatment than in the only cross-linking procedure. The loss of one eye was loss of one vision was more frequent in the cross-linking group as you see, as well as the losses of 2 lines, was while the combined treatment showed to be safer. So not only the treatment was more effective, but it was safer. More patients gained vision than patients were losing vision. The keratometric outcomes were in parallel to these features. As you see here, the key mass was significantly decreased following the combined treatment, far more than with the chronic cross-linking, in which by any reason key was unable to find statistically significant differences in the key values at the end of follow-up, at the 24 months follow-up, which is quite remarkable. And the refractive outcome in the combined group was remarkably better for the mean sphere and mean cylinder, what was irrelevant almost in the cross-linking group. So this study was clarifying not only that the combined treatment was safe, but that the combined treatment was better for the vision, for the keratometry, and for the refraction. So this is how we've based our protocol. We use not ocular, but total, but corneal wavefront. And the reason is we're treating the cornea. Most of the aberrations that happens in the patient affected with keratoconus are happening at the cornea. So we find less reliable and definitely more difficult to handle the total eye aberration, and we prefer to work with the corneal wavefront of the anterior corneal surface. We use, as Bruce Allen does, the tissue saving algorithm. We have this treatment used with no age limitation, so from adolescents to adults, we use them the same. And this should have a loss of contact of vision for far corrected. That means that we are using this treatment to improve the vision of the patient at the same time that we're stabilizing the case. The minimum pachymetry that we demand to the cornea to perform this treatment is performed at 70 microns, and we should estimate that residual stromal width should be 400 microns at least. We are making a maximum stromal ablation of 30 to 40 microns, which is important, and we use the Dresden protocol in all cases, and we eliminate the epithelium with a transepithelial technique. We don't use mitomycin C. It doesn't make for us any sense to use mitomycin C when we really try to stimulate the keratocytes that are left following the cross-linking. We know that most of them are destroyed, but we need to promote, and we were willing to promote corneal wound healing with this new collagen production. So mitomycin has, in our opinion, no role in these cases. Let me start to use some clinical cases because this is an ongoing study and we are performing in selected cases. We are using this treatment as an alternative to intracorneal ridge segments that are used in more advanced cases. For instance, we don't use intracorneal ridge segments in patients with better vision than 0.6, I mean, quality for this visual acuity, because we have published and it's demonstrated that in these cases, you have about 60 to 80% probabilities to lose lines of best-corrected vision. So these cases are with better than 0.6 for this technique that I mentioned to you, while those in which we have from 0.6 to 0.4 are for intracorneal ridge segments. So look here, this patient that had non-corrected for this visual acuity of 0.5, corrected for this visual acuity of 0.5, or also pre-op. And in this case, we customize the case for coma and trefoil. And this is how is the outcome at 3 months with a non-corrected for this visual acuity of 0.6 and corrected for this visual acuity of 1. That means that we gain 5 lines of best-corrected vision in this case, which is remarkable and is one of the many cases that we have with this outcome. Look here, the corneal aberrometry of this patient. You can see here how the spherical aberration has virtually disappeared. Coma aberration is minimal and is marginal even if you see the pre and post. Is an amazing case. This case justifies completely the improvement by the improvement in the high-grade aberration, which is the real idea and the aim of this approach. Look here, this other case in which we had non-corrected for distant vision of 0.15 with a corrected for distant vision of 4.3. Let me tell you, this is a borderline case. In this case, we are much more prone to use intracorneal ridge segments, but in this case, we decided because of the condition of the patient that was a patient that was 40 years of age to do the combined treatment, and this is the outcome. Uncorrected for this was 0.66, and the corrected for this vision was 0.96. So in this case, we gain 6 lines of best-corrected vision, which is remarkable and really can demonstrate further that we are dealing with something that is a therapeutic tool, extremely efficient in well-selected cases. Look here again, how we handle with aberrations. Look that the coma aberration has virtually disappear. The spherical aberration has decreased to levels that are virtually normal, while the other abnormal or borderline aberrations have been much more controlled. Look here also the wavefront data of the cornea, which is remarkably better following the treatment. This is the case in which we saw, as you see, this central island. This central island has a keratometry of 47.2. Look that we achieve a 43.22. We have to consider in this case we use PTK to remove the epithelium. So on top, on the customized treatment, we are flattening in part the corneal apex at the level of the keratoconus, and that has a further therapeutic value. This is a case in which this action, jointly to the customized treatment, really led the case to have from a preoperative corrected distance vision with a 0.9 to be 1, but the uncorrected vision of 0.94. So this patient gained basically lines of best corrected visual acuity. We use in this way this protocol as a refractive tool, but the symptoms of the patient were very much relieved. And you know that this patient is not only about the numbers, it's about the patient's feeling. This patient returned to almost normal feeling of vision in this very eye. This is the case. You see here the aberrations that were basically the common spherical were partially deleted, and spherical aberration is eliminated, comma is very much decreased, even that is there, but the vision has improved both in quality and, as you see, in quality for this service. So this is just a preliminary presentation. We shall follow with the series once that we finish this study. But as a take-home note, I can tell you that the combined use of trans-PRK cross-linking treatments are an alternative treatment option for non-advanced keratoconus with good vision. Provides higher visual rehabilitation compared with cross-linking alone. Its safety has been proven with a long-term observation longer than 3 years without any evidence of cases of progression different than only with the cross-linking alone. The Dresden protocol is the gold standard, and the one that we use in these cases might be that in the future these modified protocols can make this treatment to be faster, but indeed we will rely and we are confident in the Dresden protocol because there's extremely strong evidence of this use in these treatments. And basically simultaneous treatments are proving to be better than sequential ones. That is very important to consider. And ablation deaths should be minimized as much as possible. How much? Nobody knows, because the combination of a stiffer tissue with ablation seems to work well in the benefit of the patient vision. We have part of this presentation, this book of keratoconus that we published 3 years ago in the Sciences of Ophthalmology by Springer, and you can read here part of our research and part of our constant research in the treatment of keratoconus with a variety of treatments. And thank you very much. This is our surgical course that I have to announce that in June we start the second period of this important course. This course has been followed by doctors from all the world. It's a corneal refractive and corneal surgery course. We have a specific advanced keratoconus course in this course, which is online at 250 hours of teaching activities, full in English, and at the end you have a credit from the university, our university, with that expert recognition and expert certificate issued by university following the evaluation that you have to get at the end of it. And I thank you very much. It has been a pleasure for me to join you today and to learn from my Latin American colleagues as much as I can, because you have a lot of cases and a huge experience. Thank you very much for extremely kind attention.
Thank you so much, Professor Leo. It was an incredible talk. I have a quick question. Don't you think that maybe when you do this combined treatment, the cross-linking could induce some changes on the refraction for the future?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Actually, we are doing that. As you know, the Serlich polynomials are contaminated when you consider astigmatism and coma, and when you consider spherical refraction and spherical aberration. So in treating coma and spherical aberration and treating both of them, you are going to have an influence on refraction, in the spherical refraction and in the astigmatism. So of course, we know that treating only aberrations, you are going to influence the refraction. That is exactly what you saw in my presentation. So we, in this case, we ignored totally the refraction, but we got a remarkable improvement in the refraction because this mixed problem of the sonic polynemas that are really contaminated in terms of the influence of coma in the stigmatization outcome and the spherical aberration in the outcome of the sphere. And using this in the favor of vision clearly happens to be true. So if you decrease coma, you improve astigmatism. And if you decrease spherical aberration, you are improving the refraction of the patient. But you cannot calculate this. There is no way to make a systematic approach of how much will be the refractive change. But in general, and it's my evidence, you improve the refractive outcome.
Excellent, excellent.
Profesor Alió, buenas noches. Pablo Suárez le saluda.
Encantado, Pablo. ¿Cómo estás?
Muy bien, gracias. Professor, I have a question for you. Is in relation with Andres' question. Before you perform your surgery in the nomogram, you leave the patient a little bit myopic. So if in the time that cornea gets deeper, or I mean flatter, it could be like a hyperal process after that. So I don't know if you leave a little bit myopic, or what's your target at the end of the nomogram.
Thank you, Pablo. You know, we don't target any particular refraction. We target improvement of aberrations because the aim of this procedure is to improve vision. To improve vision because it is the amount of high-grade aberrations, the fact that makes the vision to degrade. So our philosophy is we shall treat the aberrations in the most significant of those and with a limit in the thickness, and we ignore the refraction. Refractive outcomes in these patients are usually improving the myopia. We have no case in which we have been treating a positive sphere so far, because these cases were myopia. So you work in favor of reducing myopia. But as I mentioned formerly, we don't have any algorithm to predict which is going to be the refractive outcome. But indeed, yes, you will influence the refraction. Yes, you will decrease the myopia and the astigmatism when myopic. You can induce any positive sphere. It is true that you can. It's not our experience. We have had not such a case, but you have to consider we're treating very selective cases, and we select case by case what to treat. This is a medication. It's such a treatment. It's not a protocol that we apply with no selection criteria. And the selection criteria was what means that some patients are for this treatment, but not all. And those that are good candidates, uniformly, I can tell you that our success rate is 96%. 96% of our patients are improving lines of best-corrected visual acuity, improving non-corrected for distal visual acuity as well.
Emilio, yes, Emilio, go ahead.
No, I had a question. Just when you have a intolerant patient, intolerant contact lens patient, and how do you choose, like which points do you consider for choosing intracorneal rings or PRK?
Thank you very much. This is a very important question. You know that I mentioned before that in a study that we published in American Journal of Ophthalmology, we could relate the success of intracorneal ring segments to the preoperative vision of the patient. And we could obtain an indirect correlation between vision and outcome in terms of gain or loss of visual acuity. In those cases with best corrected vision were prone to lose lines, while those that were with less good vision, especially bad vision, the trend to improve was much better. So we make a cutoff level in 0.6. 0.6 and beyond, we don't use intracorneal ring segments because the chances to lose vision are high. These patients have, with 0.6, a decent vision at least. And these cases are those in which we were looking for a better approach, and these cases are where we were using formerly cross-linking only, with relatively disappointing results in terms of refraction. And then is when we started treating these cases, looking at an improvement in vision, ignoring the refraction. The finding is that these patients improve vision and refraction. And so we use this approach in cases with preferably, okay, those cases that are 0.6 or more. Between 0.4 and 0.6, it depends on the accessibility of the case. If the case is accessible because of the thickness of the cornea and the feeling that we have about the operations, that we can make this amount of ablation, 50 microns maximum, eliminating a significant amount of the most relevant how to do operations, then we choose this approach. But if not, then we use intercorneal measurements that properly done properly, they are very effective tools in this group of cases. I have to tell you that we have developed an artificial intelligent neural network in order to guide the indication of the intercorneal measurements based on experience and experience of the artificial intelligence. This will be soon available. You can find this paper in TVST, Translational and Visual Science and Technology journal, has been accepted for publication 1 month ago and will be online very soon. But this is how we guide the use of intercorneal resilience. And when the patient has less than 0.2 vision, we go for corneal graft because, you know, it doesn't matter with RINS, we improve from 0.2 to 0.4. The 0.4 is still not good vision. They have a very aberrated vision and is not adequate. So less than 0.2 is for corneal graft, deep anterior graft. From 0.2 to 0.6, we try to decide based on the case. If the ablation, if this technique is possible, we try. If not, which is more frequently, we use intercorneal resilience. Those cases that are 0.6 or more, we try to do only cross-linking or PRK combined with cross-linking. And for those cases that are better than 0.8, we don't use at all intercorneal resilience. This is our present algorithm of indications.
Thank you very much.
There's a question from Francesco De Oria, and he is asking that some relevant difference in post-operative case compared to patients that undergoing only PRK.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, difference in post-operative case compared to patients that undergoing only PRK. I think that he is asking what kind of haze or maybe the chances of a haze in patients just only PRK and with cross-linking plus PRK.
Okay, thank you. Now I understand. It was probably misunderstood. I was misunderstanding the question. You know, PRK, when you are ablating 550 microns, doesn't induce haze with modern lasers. I don't see haze today, you know. These modern lasers deliver much less energy. I feel even doubtful that mitomycin is necessary if you are treating only 50 microns or 40 microns of corneal thickness. This is number one. Number two, if there is haze, happy to have haze. You know, haze for me is not a problem in keratoconus. Haze means type 3 collagen, means good healing, means stronger cornea. Exactly what we try to get. And haze will disappear in 1 year maximum. I never see scarring in these cases. And definitely, I don't care for haze that much. In other words, haze is even welcome if it appears. But you know, with modern lasers, haze in this very minimal and very limited ablations is almost nil, and suddenly you see any. Ethnicity plays a role, and the place of the world in which you work. Obviously, if you work in Ecuador, you might have a high range in the state of haze. We know that ethnically, and probably because of the geographical location, some populations of the world are more prone to develop haze. But it's true that even in these populations, I see hardly now haze. And in case of keratoconus, believe me, this is not a problem for me. I never use mitomycin when I'm treating with PRK any keratoconus case. Haze is a friend, it's not an enemy in these cases.
Thank you very much. I don't know, Andres, if you have something. Andres?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We have a lot of questions, but we need to move forward. So if you agree, we can continue with Professor Hafesi. Thank you, Dr. Alio, for your amazing talk. We learned a lot today about this protocol.
Thank you. I will leave this soon, the meeting, because I have another teleconference, but I was very happy to see all my good friends.
We know that. Thank you so much, Doctor. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Professor Hafesi, whenever you want, whenever you're ready, you can share the screen. Yeah.
So, do you see the first slide?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, now this talk will be about the latest results in our clinical applications of cross-linking. These are my financial interests pertinent to the presentation. Sorry, I just have to move something out of the way. Now it's good. Now, if you look at cross-linking for keratoconus, then we all know that it has been established a number of years ago, has become a global standard of care. And we all agree that this is a very good tool to arrest progressive keratoconus. But a few years after this primary indication, we identified another indication in Zurich, which is infectious melting. And looking at infectious melting and infectious keratitis, we realized that this is a different ballgame. Looking at infectious keratitis made us realize that we are facing an entity that, in case of numbers, outweighs keratoconus massively. It is corneal blindness is one of the leading causes of global severe visual impairment. And most of all, if you look at infectious keratitis, if we are able to treat nowadays with antibiotics, let's say 4th generation fluoroquinolones, then this is nice and good to have. But what about the treatment that we need to perform in 10 or 15 years? We all know that antimicrobial resistance is increasing massively, and 4th generation fluoroquinolone means nothing else than a 40-year-old molecule that has been redesigned 3 times and improved 3 times. Since 1980, no new class of antibiotics has been developed or discovered. So we are running out of weapons here. Any method that can kill bacteria and even fungi at the same time without the use of antimicrobials, but by using, let's say, light and UV light and riboflavin is more than just welcome. Also, cross-linking potentially has a great impact on mixed infections, simply because if you are a 2nd-year resident, then it's much harder to identify mixed infections than if you have 20 years of experience. But even if you talk to Dan Gore, the head of cornea at Moorfields, he will tell you that in his clinical experience, he can handle 90 or more % of all cases without needing a culture or a smear. But in 5 to 10% of cases, he also runs into major diagnostic problems because the clinical appearance can be so plurifold, and diagnostic issues, they translate later on into therapeutic issues. So PAC cross-linking kills both arms at the same time. That's an advantage. And in the end, if we manage to find a treatment that drives down costs on a global level, this is highly welcome. And I'm not talking about the costs of the antibiotics, for example. If you go to India, then antibiotics are dirt cheap. Everybody can afford them. The major problem in costs is us, is the ophthalmologist, is the optometrist, is the vision health professional. So in many instances in remote areas, patients might come to you once, maybe twice, but they will not follow up 6 or 7 times because of an infectious ulcer. They simply run out of money. So any method you can establish that reduces the number of post-op of clinical follow-ups is also highly welcome. Now, when looking into these unmet needs, we looked at the basic mechanisms of cross-linking again. How can it be that cross-linking can work in keratoconus and potentially in infection? Well, it can, because when you cross-link a cornea, you do not only stiffen it. The stiffening effect is called number 1 here, is only one of 4 effects. At the same time, you stiffen, but you also increase the resistance of the tissue to digestion. And this is nice to have in keratoconus because of upregulation of MMP9, but it's essential in infectious melting. And effects 3 and 4 are very good in killing anything that lives on this cornea or within this cornea. But you should realize that effects 1 to 4 do not only happen in PAC cross-linking, they happen in every single cross-linking procedure you perform. So if you perform a CXL for keratoconus, you induce effects 1 to 4. You care less about effects 3 to 4 because you don't need to kill pathogen in this cornea. It's a keratoconus cornea. But still, it will leave you an open surface in the end that is completely devoid of microorganisms, or almost completely, which is good to have. And yet another reason why we believe that we can take this technology to the slit lamp. Now, looking at PAC cross-linking, the first publication for infectious treatments came up in 2008, and we treated 5 cases of therapy-resistant, mostly bacterial keratitis with surprisingly good results, and this was using the Dresden protocol. A few years later, we had to define the term for the new indication, and we called it PAC cross-linking. PAC stands for photoactivated chromophore for keratitis cross-linking. But then it was a Swedish group that took PAC CXL to the next level. Karim Maktoumi and Jes Mortensen, they used the CXL Dresden protocol in 16 eyes with bacterial keratitis and gave no medication at all. All these patients received was light, vitamin B2, and vitamin A ointment after the treatment. 14 of these 16 eyes healed completely without any additional medication. 2 eyes needed additional antibiotics. So this was surprising. And when we saw the results of this study, we really knew that PAC CXL is something we have to look into even more. So in the next step, around 2013, we became too enthusiastic. We tried to kill the biggest ulcers on earth using PAC CXL, which in hindsight was not a good idea. So we went into huge ulcers, impending perforation ulcers, using the Dresden protocol, and we did not change the game. As you can see, huge ulcers, 7.5 millimeters, and one group was with conventional medication, the other was medication plus cross-linking, Dresden protocol. No significant difference in the time to healing. We might have increased the tissue's resistance to digestion, which is certainly a good thing in a process that leaves the cornea very, very soft and unstable, but we did not change the time to healing using effluence of 5.4 joule, just like in the Dresden keratoconus protocol. And this was the moment to lean back, reflect, and think, what should we do different? And we started looking into 2 things, increasing the fluence and accelerating the technology at the same time, because if this should be a global weapon, then 30 minutes are too long. We have to be faster. Now, accelerating cross-linking is a tricky thing. As you may know, that accelerating CXL for keratoconus cannot be done indefinitely. We published an IOVS paper 6 years ago. This was Arthur Hammer, my MD PhD student, and he was able to show that starting 10 minutes, 9 milliwatts, the efficacy of CXL, of biomechanical stiffening, cross-linking for keratoconus, dropped drastically. Why? We know nowadays why it is the oxygen diffusion that limits this effect. So we were eager to check the same thing in PAC cross-linking, and to our surprise, we published this in the same year. PAC cross-linking within the range that you see on the screen now works at the same efficacy. So you can accelerate down to less than 3 minutes while maintaining the same bacterial killing efficacy. So PAC cross-linking seems to be much less dependent on oxygen. Still, all of this was done at 5.4 joule. And then this year we published a study together with our friend Boris Kneiser from Israel. And what we did is 2 things. We went back to smaller ulcers and we accelerated the treatment. So this is the control group, small ulcers, a little more than 40 eyes, conventionally treated, against a comparable group of antimicrobial treatment and highly accelerated cross-linking. So this is not half an hour, this is only 3 minutes, but at 30 milliwatts, still 5.4 joule. And here, yes, indeed, we had a significant difference in the time to healing. The combined group healed much faster, significantly faster than the antimicrobial alone group, which means these patients need less follow-up, which in many areas of the world would translate to a higher chance of being successful. And these are some of the ulcers that were treated in this study. Almost simultaneously, we were involved in another study in Egypt, using the same protocol, the same acceleration, but slightly bigger. So we got more courageous. We went into slightly bigger ulcers again. As you can see here, 5 millimeters, mid-sized ulcers, but the exact same concept. One group with antimicrobials only and the other antimicrobials with highly accelerated cross-linking. And of course, these ulcers would take much longer to heal, but significantly faster in the cross-linking and antimicrobial group. So again, it seems to make sense in small, but also in mid-sized ulcers to always perform an additional cross-linking. And I would dare to say, I would even do it in the big ulcers because it might not influence the time to healing as far as we know now, but it will make the tissue more solid, which is certainly good for the final scar. Now, the last missing element was a study that would work prospectively, randomized, comparing cross-linking alone against medication alone, an RCT. This is what we have been doing. We've been doing an RCT for ulcers up to 4 millimeters with high fluence, accelerated, randomizing patients either to cross-linking alone, PAC cross-linking, or medication alone. The study was run in China, India, Egypt, Israel, and Switzerland. And please don't misunderstand me. I do not advocate to do PAC cross-linking alone in the future, but for the sake of better understanding the potential of the method, we wanted to completely separate the effects. Now, what we did is the patients would come in and get randomized to one of these two groups. If the patient gets into the PAC cross-linking group, gets only light and vitamin B2, but then the patient is monitored every day. And if there is a treatment failure, which means the patient needs additional medication, then the patient is considered a failure and is moved to the medication group. We had 23 eyes in the medication group and 23 eyes in the PAC cross-linking group. As you can see, rather smaller ulcers. It is an accelerated protocol with high fluence, and the results were quite surprising in a positive way. On one hand, we didn't see a significant difference in the time to healing. The time to healing did not show significant differences. And the percentage of success in these cases was not significantly different either. Almost 90% of healing with PAC cross-linking alone against a little more than 90% of healing in antimicrobials alone, which is very promising and very exciting to us. So this means that you will be able to have a high chance of healing such processes with PAC cross-linking alone. Again, I wouldn't do this alone with PAC CXL alone. This was for the sake of the study, but the likelihood of success will then even be higher if we combine these treatments. The most commonly identified bacteria were gram-positives, and the most common fungi in our study was Aspergillus. Now, what will the future hold? The near future will hold a massive increase in fluence. This one has just been published by our group a few weeks ago. Sabine Kling from our group looked at, do you see my pointer moving on the screen? Okay, as you can see,
yes.
Everything you have seen so far was in the fluence of 5 to 7 joule, which is here. And this is the killing rate, and this is 100%. So Sabine has shown in vitro, if we go to 10 fluence and to 15 fluence, we get to 99.9% of killing in bacteria, for instance. Even 5 joule in blue and 7.2 joule in yellow have a huge difference. And as we know that the cornea can tolerate much higher fluences than we thought previously, the next step would be to get to 10 joule at least, or even 15 joule to increase the efficacy of killing. Is this too much for the endothelium? I don't think so. Just as a reminder, customized cross-linking uses 15 joule already now in keratoconus corneas over the center. And the keratoconus cornea is more transparent and has higher UV transmittance than an edematous infectious keratitis cornea. So I think we are quite safe for the endothelium, and I'm very curious to see the high fluence clinical studies coming up now. We're in the process of planning them. Lastly, everything I've shown you now is for the few fortunate % of the global population that can even afford to see an eye doctor. So what is the sense in having this technology locked into expensive infrastructure? If we want to really democratize the access of cross-linking, we have to take cross-linking and puck cross-linking out of this expensive infrastructure and translate it into a less expensive infrastructure. And the smallest common denominator we all share as eye doctors is the slit lamp. And so we decided 7 years ago, almost 8 years ago, to look into the project of creating slit lamp-based cross-linking. Remember the slide I showed you before with all the effects happening in the CXL cornea? It means that a keratoconus cornea is disinfected at the end of a CXL procedure. So why not take this CXL procedure, even for keratoconus, onto the slit lamp? This is what we have been doing now, and finally, we're very proud to announce that in the midst of the Corona crisis, the machine was finished and received its CE mark. So we will very soon be able to perform cross-linking at the slit lamp, and these are the specifications. You can use this machine at the slit lamp, but also on a stand in the lying position, just like any other cross-linking device. And we try to create a small piece of high tech that can do 3, 9, 15, 18, 20, 18, 30 milliwatts, sorry for that, pulsed and continuous light. It has a thickness adaptive profile for more energy in the periphery and is highly mobile. If you forget the charger, you can use your smartphone-based USB-C charger or even your Mac laptop charger to recharge the device. So we strongly believe by doing this, we can maximize the effect of puck cross-linking. Right now, we see an efficacy similar to antimicrobials for smaller and mid-sized ulcers. The treatment for now can be accelerated down to 4 minutes at 30 milliwatts. This is totally feasible also at the slit lamp. Even higher fluences will increase the efficacy further in the near future, and putting the whole technology to the slit lamp will democratize access and serve the underserved and remote areas. And I think in Brazil, the Amazon would be a perfect example of a remote area that needs steady access. Thank you very much for your attention. This is our team effort provided by our team at Zurich University and the Alzheimer Institute. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Jafesi. Thanks for sharing this amazing project. In my humble opinion, I think, as you know, in Latin America, we have a lot of infectious keratitis, right? And I really think this is one of the most excited projects around cross-linking therapy. I think we can get great results with our patient with this technology. Thank you so much for sharing this. It's amazing.
Thank you very much. We are really excited about it because it might change the way we treat infections in the future, hopefully.
Absolutely. Valeria, what do you think?
Thank you, Dr. Jafesi. It was a great talk. At the hospital, we are doing PAC cross-linking for almost 6 years now. We've tried it with bacteria, with fungi, and in Acantamueva, with good results in Acantamueva and bacteria, and in some cases maybe mixed or the not as severe fungi keratitis. But we do use a small amount of steroids in some cases, just for a few days. I believe that if the cross-linking, we use the Dresden protocol. We are not using as high fluences as you have, but we do use small steroids, believing that the surgery itself can produce some inflammation that we have to stop what do you think about that? Is that something you've tried, or it's a no in any case?
Well, first of all, I'm very happy to hear that you've been using it for a number of years. And if I may suggest, I think you would be perfectly safe to go at least to 7.2 joule or even to 10 joule for now. And yes, what we've seen in the large ulcers is a huge increase in the inflammatory reaction a few hours or the day after PAC cross-linking. And initially, we did not fully understand it until we realized, well, if you kill a lot of bacteria or microorganisms on day 0, then please don't be surprised if you see a lot of dead bacteria and that's inflammatory cells the next day. And a colleague from internal medicine told me that's a Jarisch-Herxheimer reaction similar to tuberculosis treatment. So yes, I think if you can manage the interference with the immunomodulation in mixed infections, even then absolutely. I would just be a little cautious in certain areas of mixed infections, but I think you have much more experience in your climates with mixed infections than we do in Switzerland.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm just looking, there is one question regarding from Mariano Ye. For the treatment of ulcers, do you prefer to use continuous mode or pulsed mode? As per now, since we have some data suggesting that oxygen diffusion is less important in PAC cross-linking, we do not use any pulsed protocol. The machine has pulsed protocols for iontophoresis-assisted epi-on. So 18 milliwatts pulsed high fluence, 30 milliwatts pulsed high fluence, but for PAC cross-linking, we use continuous light, 4 minutes, 30 milliwatts for now.
Excellent. Pablo, do you have any comments?
There's a question that when slit lamine cross-linking will be commercially available?
It is commercially available since a few days, in fact. Let me just show you I don't know whether I can share the screen, and I don't want to do this for too long, but as you can see here, if I share my main screen, it's the company ImagineEye, and I don't know whether you can see this now, but cross-linking is commercially available and production has started. We have partnered with CXL Italia, so a company with a long-standing experience. They built the Sirius, the MS-39. Now they built the CI device. So this one is on the market since a few days with CE mark, and also the riboflavin that is needed with it. It is a riboflavin, and this was important to us too. It's a riboflavin that is hypoosmolaric, doesn't carry HPMC or dextrane for a specific reason. We have been designing this with Eberhard Spörl himself for more than a year, and it's one riboflavin you should be able to use for epi-off, for epi-on, for iontophoresis-assisted epi-on, like the Riqualene, and for PAC cross-linking. I do not simply see any reason to have 25 different riboflavins that are confusing everybody in the market. If you design the solution well, then one riboflavin fits them all. So this is already available.
Excellent. That
Thank
is
you
a
very much.
very
Excellent.
smart decision to make just one riboflavin, right? Because we have so many options.
Yeah, there are too many options, and you don't really need it. I think it's, well, you can judge for yourself.
Thank you, Professor Hafesi. Thank you so much. Okay, Valeria, the lady of the group, it's your turn. Thank you so much for being here. Whenever you want, you can share your screen and begin.
Okay, thank you for the invitation to Ophthalmo University, to Andres, to Pablo, and all of you being here. I'm just gonna speak about cross-linking iontophoresis versus the Dresden EPI-off protocol. Okay, let me see. I have no financial interest in this work. So there's a lot of publication about demarcation line and the effectiveness of cross-linking in, well, there's few of the papers that have studied this. So we have a lot of things on that. Different protocols exist nowadays, and there's a debate if all of them work the same for stopping progression for corneal ectasia. The conventional cross-linking procedure, considered to be the gold standard, as we've been talking about, the epi-off, which requires a long time, 45 to an hour of the preparation. So this requires a long time for the doctor and for the patient. So new accelerated treatments and other modalities, as you've been talking about, have been used to shorten this treatment time, improving patient comfort and reducing hospital waiting. And one of the parameters of effectivity has been for some years now been measuring the demarcation line. The demarcation line by confocal microscopy is another way of studying besides the OCT. And there's a lot of published work that confocal microscopy and OCT have equivalence in doing this, on measuring this line. What you see here is the hyperreflectivity of the activated keratocyte, and this is a post-LASIK patient at the depth of 275 microns, and you can see the difference between the images. The one on the left is a normal stroma with no surgery performed, and the one on the right is the post-LASIK. So at the hospital, we did a study between groups analyzed by confocal microscopy to determine the effect of in vivo cross-linking with 3 different protocols. We did a group of epi-off with the Dresden protocol, epi-on, and Iontophoresis. The equipment we used was, it was a CSO Vega UVA light illuminator, the ConfoScan 4 technology, and Italian technology, and we analyzed it with a NIDEC software, the Navis. Here you can see that we analyzed the changes by confocal microscopy at different levels. On the first column is the Dresden protocol, the one in the middle, the epi-on, and on the right is the Iontophoresis. We did measure the 3-month effect, but we did not find any differences between groups, so I'm not going to show that. Here you can see the epi-off group, that it has a lot of hyperreflectivity by week 1 and by the month. This, what it says is that the amount of activated keratocytes and cells at this depth is more than the other 2 groups. Here we can see the anterior stroma at 50 microns depth, and the 3 groups present changes at this level, but the epi-off group has the most activity of the 3 of them, even followed by the Iontophoresis group, and the epi-on and the Iontophoresis are quite the same at this level. When we go to a deeper stroma, in the middle stroma at 150 microns, the difference is clear between groups, being the Dresden protocol, the highest amount, showing the highest amount of activity at this level, and the other 2 groups with less activity by the month. This is a case where we performed on the right eye the Dresden protocol, and on the left side, the Iontophoresis. The surgery was performed on the same day. And the differences in keratocyte is very important between eyes, although you can still see changes in the Iontophoresis eye, in the left eye, by the month at 150 microns. So the conclusion here was that in vivo confocal microscopy in humans can show the activity. This could be equivalent to the demarcation line seen by the OCT techniques. And the three groups did show some differences, but the EPIOF protocol by far is the one that showed the deepest and the more activity in the keratocytes at the stromal corneal interface. So does this mean that iontophoresis cross-linking does not work because the demarcation line is not as deep and the activity in the confocal microscopy is not as big as the Dresden? So we did another study where we did take the three cross-linking groups, but the Epion group wasn't good enough for us to believe in iontophoresis. So we only stayed with the conventional versus the iontophoresis. We had 101 patients. Our study had a mean age of 23 years of age. 56% of the patients were male, and almost 96% of the patients had a diagnosis of keratoconus, and the rest of the group had a post-LASIK ectasia. In this table, we can see the difference between groups at 3 years, 36 months after we performed the surgery. And we analyzed the best corrected visual acuity, the sphere, cylinder, keratometries, Kmax and the minimum, and the pachymetry. And we found that there were no significant differences between the Dresden protocol and the iontophoresis technique. So what Emilio was saying at his talk about the maximal keratometry, well, we also used it because it's what other papers have been doing, considering that the Kmax is or could be one of the indicators of keratoconus progression, and we did not find any statistical significance between groups when we compared it when we analyzed the keratometry, the maximal keratometry. So we decided to do a non-inferiority analysis to see if iontophoresis was at least not inferior to the Dresden protocol, and we found that there was no significant differences between groups, although we did find that the most clinically changes were seen on the Dresden protocol, as a lot of papers have been published. So what factors influence the demarcation line? Clinically, it is unclear whether this line depth is proportional to the depth of the cross-links or the efficacy of the cross-linking. It could be influenced by many factors during the procedure, such as the type of riboflavin that we use, the concentration profile, the initial diffusion depth. It could be the effective dose of the UV light or the absorption of the epithelial of the riboflavin in the cases of Epion techniques. And there's a lot of papers now talking about the importance of the oxygen diffusion during treatments. And this is very different between groups in Europe, in the United States, in Mexico. There is no one standard time of letting the cornea absorb oxygen and how many seconds should we permit to do this. So we concluded that for stopping progression of corneal ectasia, iontophoresis was not inferior when compared to the Dresden protocol, although the demarcation line and clinical changes are greater in the EPIAF protocol. There is a lot of evidence in the literature that many different protocols do stop the progression of ectasia, indistinct of the demarcation line in the depth of it. So we need more evidence that associates the biomechanics of the cornea with the demarcation line and the time that the progression really stops. Thank you.
Thank you, Vale. Great, as always. Thank you so much. I would like to know the opinion about this line demarcation. Dr. Jafesi and Emilio, what do you think about it? Because we have some different opinions about it, right? What is your thought about? Professor, you're...
Would you like to start, Emilio?
Oh, yeah, again, well, the demarcation line, we actually don't have the definite answer. We know that by when we see we have some changes up to that point, but we are not sure if that really corresponds to the efficacy. In other words, we are not sure if a little bit deeper demarcation line would be correspondingly fully to a higher efficacy, stiffening effect, although many studies have suggested in this direction. So another recent protocol for evaluating thin corneas from Italy, from Mazzotta, he evaluated the demarcation line as a way to predict efficacy, and it would also allow the treatment of thin corneas, but instead of using, like our protocol, one single energy or whatever energy you would like, and it would be much simpler. But instead of doing this, you could use different energies according to the demarcation line. But there are many questions still to be answered about the demarcation line, of course. So by now, at least, is something that we can see after the surgery, because all the biomechanical indexes that we have in vivo are still under development. So aura, it's hard to see differences. And although we can see some differences on the peaks of the two peaks that we have on the graph, and Corvis more recently also can show some indexes, but it's still under development, so we are not sure what to see. At least the demarcation line, we see that at that point, something occur at the corner. What exactly does that mean? I think there are still many answers to be answered.
Amen. If I can also make some comments, I think we all are looking for a good, effective functioning epi-on cross-linking. And for the past few years, I was not too convinced of the techniques that were out there. I'm certainly not convinced of the technique currently used in the US. And we were very public about this. But when we identified oxygen, that was back in 2014, we did this in a chamber without any oxygen content, right? And then we had zero cross-linking effect. So it became clear that you need riboflavin and oxygen. And the epithelium is a barrier to both. Iontophoresis takes care of the riboflavin transport into the cornea, but you still have the barrier of oxygen diffusion. So historically, soon thereafter, industry came up with pulsed light and said, well, you can switch on the light and switch off the light to allow for rediffusion. We did this experimentally, and because rediffusion theoretically should take much longer than only a second, it didn't really change the game. Then we continued thinking further and said, if we do iontophoresis assisted epi-on and oxygen diffusion is slow, maybe we should do the opposite of the Dresden protocol. So not do the treatment in half an hour, just for the sake of understanding, do this in 1 hour with 1.5 milliwatts. And then we had very efficient transepithelial iontophoresis assisted cross-linking, but nobody wants to spend 1 hour. But it showed to us that, aha, not only pulsed light, but also slowing down. The third element is if you increase the fluence, you increase the stiffening effect. And none of the protocols so far on the market has done this. Now, recently, a company we all know in the US has taken our final statement we made at the end of every presentation a few years ago, saying that if you put the patient into a hyperbaric chamber or increase oxygen flow over the cornea, you should increase efficacy. And this is translated into oxygen boost goggles. This makes sense to me, but it also makes the whole technology very expensive because you increase the level of complexity. So what I really like is a protocol that Cosimo Mazzotta, and Emilio has just mentioned him before. Our friend Cosimo Mazzotta has taken all the pieces of evidence and has created a protocol where he uses epi-on, iontophoresis assisted, so enough riboflavin in the cornea. Then he pulses the light, he increases the fluence, and he makes it relatively slow, accelerated, but relatively slow. 18 milliwatts pulsed, 7.2 joule, 13 minutes. Without additional oxygen, just the oxygen in the air, because the combination of all these things allows you to work with the oxygen in the air. And here's a demarcation line at 290 microns. So almost identical to Dresden protocol epi-off. We are very excited about this protocol, and we will start a multi-center trial now with Cosimo Mazzotta and the Dresden group, the original Dresden group, to see whether we can use this, because then you would effectively have iontophoresis assisted transepithelial cross-linking at the slit lamp, and this would be a dream, without fancy oxygen goggles and using less invasive infrastructure. So I think we slowly start putting all the pieces of the puzzle together, and I think we will soon have an epi-on that will work and that will not be too expensive, will be affordable.
Excellent. Valeria, there is a question of Professor, where is it? Let me see, sorry, it's here. Dr. Marotta, in your conclusion, you choose iontophoresis in cases of thin corneas? Is your first option for this kind of cornea, thin corneas?
Yes, we always use iontophoresis, even for the thin corneas with the contact lens. And for PAC, always Dresden, but we have tried a couple of patients with small ulcers and not as deep, and tried to heal them with iontophoresis with good results, but there's too few patients, so we cannot say that it works. So for PAC, just stay with the Dresden protocol, as Dr. Hafesi just talked about, and maybe use his equipment and put higher fluence, now I know. But for the thin corneas, iontophoresis works fine.
And just
in my hands.
Just to mention as well, because Ferry mentions about higher fluence that Valeria also just mentioned for PAC cross-linking. So for PAC cross-linking, we can also use higher fluence, but we can also accelerate the treatment. So because for bacteria or for microorganisms, the oxygen it does not seem to be the key factor as it is for keratoconus. In other words, for the stiffening effect, we don't need wait 30 minutes, even if you do the same energy as Dresden protocol, let's say 5.4 joules, we could even do much faster. So accelerating cross-linking would still maintain, in theory, very similar effects as Dresden. That doesn't work for keratoconus for the stiffening effect, but that probably works very similar to Dresden protocol for PAC cross-linking. And just the last comments about the iontophoresis that Valeria showed her results, very nice. I don't personally, I only saw a few cases in OCT images of demarcation lines and patients, but I never had a lot of experience in vivo, let's say, with iontophoresis, but my impression was all the cases that I saw in OCT image 1 month after iontophoresis assisted with 10 minutes, so a short irradiation, I couldn't even see the demarcation line very well. So that was an issue. And also in the laboratory, we measure the iontophoresis, and we, as was mentioned before, we could only see difference when we did very long. So I'm not completely sure to maybe say that 10 minutes of iontophoresis as it is right now is safe in long term to treat keratoconus. So transepithelial cross-linking, some series has up to 30% of failure over time. So 30% is much higher than what we have. So of course we need more time, but we have to consider iontophoresis as it is right now has for sure much lower stiffening effect than any other EP-off procedure.
Excellent, excellent. Pablo, any words?
No, I'm here, amazed.
I think, I don't know what do you think, Pablo, but I think we just had a master in cross-linking. I have no word to thank your participation, your time, almost 2 hours with all Latin America. For me, it was one of the best webinars that we ever had. What do you think, Pablo?
Well, yes. Well, we have in this webinar today, we have a lot. We have cross-linking with a little bit of refractive surgery. We have cross-linking in infectious disease, and all these of iontophoresis that Valeria has talked to us was amazing. As we were talking at the beginning of the webinar, that's our mission. Give a lot of information, specific information, share with these opinion leaders worldwide. So I am very thankful for this opportunity to hear these big leaders and friends.
Thank you so much. Any words before we say goodbye? Dr. Jafesi, Emilio, Valeria?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk with Dr. Jafesi and Emilio, and well, Dr. Alio that just left, but I am very honored to share the table with you too. So thank you, Andres and Pablo, for the invitation.
You are now turning Valeria the super iontophoresis girl in Latam.
Thank you, Dr. Sanchez. I really enjoyed the iontophoresis talk, and thank you to all of you for inviting me. It was really a pleasure. It's I think yeah, almost midnight now in Zurich, so I'm getting a little tired. And
very light. It's very late. Sorry.
No worries. I'm Let me just show you where I'm sitting for real, because this is just a virtual background, right? I'm sitting next to the kitchen because I had to grab a coffee right before. This is when I disappeared from the screen. But it was a real pleasure, and I hope we can soon do this again and maybe even meet in person.
Absolutely.
Thank you, thank you, Dr. Japesi. It was a really pleasure to be with you and share with you.
Please just make sure that you give Emilio back to us, because we miss him here in Switzerland.
Yeah.
Oh, Emilio. Yeah, you're right. You're not in Switzerland right now, right?
Right now,
Exactly.
no. I'm in
You have
Brazil.
to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still captured in Brazil.
That's why he's smiling all the time, because he's in Brazil with caipirinha.
So, Andreas, thank you very much. Andreas, Pablo, Valeria, nice to see you again. Ferry, all of you, and thank you for Ophthalmo University. Congratulations for the amazing job you're doing every day. It must be very hard.
It is.
Twice a day for every day for a month, I don't know. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, we are very honored.
Muito obrigado.
Muito obrigado. It's a really big honor for us. Thank you, guys. See you soon.
Thank
you,
you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye, Dr. Japesi.
Goodbye.